Here we have the completed NES build. Let's take a look back and see how we got here. The project started almost 2 years ago with the Super Nintendo computer, where I crammed a mini-ITX motherboard into an SNES Junior case. The system featured a 2nd Gen Core 5 low voltage variant with 16 gigs of DDR3 RAM and a 360 gig SSD. The computer had good specs, it ran smoothly, and was relatively quiet. It was missing, however, one key component: dedicated graphics. A lot of work was spent carving out the NES case so that everything would fit inside. With the added space of the NES, there was little reason to put only a GPU inside of it. The case was designed and successfully was able to fit all of these core components. First of all, there was the most important of the Nvidia Quadro P620 GPU. Followed that up with exhaust fans to keep the heat out. A fan controller for those fans that would be able to adjust from high to low as needed. I also wanted an LCD fan controller as well. Then there was the need for an Arduino sound effects, and then sent with the extra space of the NES case, a second SSD to go with the primary drive. And then lastly, original NES ports in the front that connect to USB so controllers can be used. First, let's talk about the GPU. The GPU required a lot of case cutting. In both cases, that is. Once all that got sorted out, it's time to move over to the exhaust fan. This part was quite a bit easier. Scored on the back of the case where the opening for the fans were and cut it out. I did try on the right side of the case, avoid cutting off the label that had the original labeling of the NES. I like the labeling, so I wanted to try and keep it. Other than that, it was fairly straightforward and simple. The fan controller was not quite as simple. There was a lot of plastic that they needed to cut out or sand it down around the cartridge slot to get it to fit in correctly. There was also some edge plastic on the bezel of the fan controller itself that had to be trimmed down. But after all the trimming, it lined up fairly good. Tight, but it was good. And SSD. I had already acquired a mount and had an idea where I wanted to put it, off to the side above one of the cooling fans. Mounting went fairly simple. Well, having to get the right screws and making sure they're long enough. But other than that, it was fairly simple. Problem was, cables themselves, connectors were too thick for them to fit. Fortunately, I was able to move drive 1/4 inch over, slide them towards the inside of the case, and that allowed the cables to fit without issues. And lastly was the controller port. That was fairly simple. It was actually designed to have the controller ports in the controller board, except put them wherever housing you want and then solder them up. Unfortunately, and I'm glad I checked this beforehand, the ports that came with the kit were modeled exactly after the NES controller jacks. Wasn't a gap, so it was extremely tight fit, uncomfortably tight. So I actually opted to go with the original ports, which looks cooler anyways, because they're a little bit wider and the controllers plug in smoothly. I had to Dremel out the plastic around the pins, but once I did that, lined them up, soldered them, and everything looks like it's working. That has been a short look back at the NES build, the main components that went into this system. I did forget the LED lights, but I hope you enjoyed this look back at how this odd, weird computer was built, and thank you for coming on this journey with me. I had a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed my commentary on this system and the hardware that I chose. I'll put in the description all my specs since I didn't go through them in this video. But thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, like, don't like. It's all good out there in the hood. And have a good evening. Stay safe. Bye-bye.